All right, today we're working on a procedure. I'm going to show Jackson exactly what I do in going through one of these cars to try to get him to start up. The first thing I'm going to try, and I'm going to have him do in just a second, is to just go ahead and hit the ignition. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off the front of the car so I am not right in the line of the car when it goes to start up. We know nothing about this car, so safe, better than sorry. If your knees are up against that bumper and he bumps that starter, it could bust your knees up. I have never seen that happen before, but I gotta believe there's some guy out there who can tell a story. So if you've got that story, put it in the comments below. All right, Jackson, hit the key.
Nothing.
Nada. And nada is kind of typical on these cars. Probably what's going on is that the neutral safety switch is all jacked up, and if it's like that, a lot of times it won't start because the neutral safety switch is keeping it from starting it. Now you can do a hot wire for that, and there's a couple videos out there from different people to show you how to do it, but we're not going to worry about that right now. What we're going to concentrate on is trying to get this engine to start as it sits right now.
For 45 years, the Miller family and the dedicated staff at Autocrafters have been here helping you to restore your dream Ford. Thank you for your support. Here's to another 45 years of delivering parts for your Falcon, Fairlane, F100, Galaxy, Maverick, and Pinto.
All right, so do you know what you're supposed to do now?
No.
One of the first things I like to do, my experience with these engines in the last few years has been that most people have no idea what they've got going on. And what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll do a poor man's version of going in and working on things. And they will put a new set of points and condenser inside of the cap here. And then they will adjust the points, and the points will not be adjusted correctly. So we're going to pull the cap on this, and I'm going to check the points to see what our gap is on the points. I'm going to pull the cap off, and I'm going to go get my tuning kit. And I'm going to check this first of all before we do anything else, because you want to make sure your engine is going to be running correctly if it runs. So let me go get some tools, and we'll get busy on that. What you're going to normally want to do whenever you're trying to find if your points are at the correct spot in their gap is you may need a remote starter like the one I've got here. Put one of the leads for your remote starter on the positive side of the battery, and the other one will go on the start. It doesn't matter which way they go. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the rotor off of here. I'm going to take a look at this and see the condition. It's not in bad shape. It would run with this. It'll run. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to look at my points now. What you're looking for is your points being right here. These are your points, this set here. And you want the rub bar for the points, which is right here on the highest point on the cam on the actual distributor. This one is sitting right now on the highest point, so we're good to go for that. That wasn't good. I didn't mean to lose that. All right, so I'm going to have to find that with something that's down in the dirt. There's a clip that was on here. I thought maybe it was just a piece of plastic that was caught, but that clip actually keeps my rotor centered up where it needs to be. So I'm going to pull that aside. We'll have to go look for that in a second. We're lucky right now because this is on the high spot. Were it not on the high spot, we have to take our remote starter and just bump the starter over till we get that on a high spot, and then we're good to go to check points. Now, this is supposed to have a 24 to 26 point gap on a Ford 200 straight 6, according to the Ford parts manual. I'm going to put my feeler gauge in there. That is probably at least a 32 gap. That's going to be too much gap for what we're doing here, so I'm going to have to go in and adjust the points. Now, we've done a video in the past showing you how to adjust points. I'm going to go ahead and do it again just so you can see it. There's two spots that you're working with. There's a screw right here and a screw right here. Jackson's going to jump back on camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this one. And what can happen is the distributor can kick with you. You see it move there. And then you have to also undo this one. And what I'm going to try to do is to get my points down to a 25 gap. Getting close right there. There's a little notch here that you can stick a flat blade screwdriver in and close them up. You're going to need to get yourself a set of feeler gauges if you're going to work with points on these old cars. Okay, that's maybe a 24. I'm going to leave it there and tighten it back up. Always tighten that back one back here up first. Then you'll need to check your points one more time. We're at 25, and that's right in the middle ground between the 24 and 26 that they talk about in the manual. So our points look good. We don't yet know if the condenser is working correctly or not, but we're going to find that out when we go to try to start it. I'm not going to start doing condenser tests and all that because I don't have a meter out here for me to work with on this. All right, so the cap's back on. Whew, sweaty out here today. So we know that we have a good point gap. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab some tools. I'm going to take number 1 off of here, and I'm going to go in and get my 3/4, maybe a 5/8, probably a 3/4 wrench on the small block Ford, and take number 1. On a Ford, on a 6-cylinder, this is number 1 always. It's not at the back. It's not anywhere else. And it's usually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is your firing order right here. This is a 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, 4. That's your firing order, so you'll know that that's what it's supposed to do here. I'm going to pull a plug and check my gap. I'm going to put the rotor back on now. As my neighbor tries to kill his lawnmower. All right, all these distributor caps have a tab in them on the underside to locate it. That's in location right now. Now that's on, so now we got to go in and check the plugs. I found that a lot of guys just don't know how to gap these plugs. They'll just leave them the way they come out of the box. And now, any of these kind of plugs that you use, the gap is always set to electronic ignition. It's not set to points. So most of the time you have to re-gap your plugs when you're putting them in the engine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull number 1 out, and I want to see, yeah, they're pretty tight. That's good. I'm going to pull this plug out, and we're going to check it against our little tool over here that I've got. Probably going to deceive me at this point.
I don't think any of this is where it should go.
All right, it's got some rust, but the plugs actually look pretty good. And I think the gap on this is actually correct. It's supposed to be a 32 to a 36 gap on a straight 6. That's a 34. So it's between a 34 and a 35. That's good enough. 35 is your middle ground on that. So I'm gonna close my eyes and pretend everything's okay. Whistle in that graveyard and put number 1 back. And I'm just gonna work under the wacky assumption that everything else on this is copacetic. Put that plug back in there and tighten it up. Put our wire back on. All right, now the crew and I will spend the next 25 to 30 minutes looking for that clip that came off of the distributor. Because, you know, fun, right? Actually, I'm not going to do that. I got an idea. We have a spare 6. I'm going to go see if I can grab the one off of it. All right, now my little tech tip for you is if you're working on something like this and you're taking parts off of the engine, always put a tarp underneath the engine if you can, if you're working in the grass like we are today, because parts will fall off, and when they fall on that grass, you're going to have a heck of a time finding them. So be advised that parts like this, you're not going to get down at the AutoZone anymore. Now I'm going to pull in close, see if you can see it. That little clip right there goes on the distributor and holds the rotor in place. All right, your next thing to check, if you have a battery in the car when you buy it, is to make sure it's going to turn over, okay? A lot of times you don't, you're going to put a battery in, you're going to try it yourself. So make sure your battery is at 12 volts. So you put a meter on it and check that for 12 volts. We'll show that in just a second. If this one doesn't crank over, we'll check our battery. I'm just going to go ahead and make a, Daddy needs a new pair of shoes gamble here and see if it'll turn over. Hey, what do you know? It'll turn over. All right, so we now know that we have rotating function, that the engine will rotate. What I want to do right now is I'm going to let it rotate over a couple of times to listen to see if anything sounds like it's catching, like there's a problem in the bottom end of the engine. So I'm going to roll it over. Sounds just like a 200 inline six. So we're good to go there. We don't have to worry about that. So what's our next course here? What are we going to do next? Well, a lot of guys are going to tell me I should have primed the oil pump and all that, but we don't really know. I mean, it may be a dead engine anyway. My theory on this and the way I usually do things is if it is an inline six or a V8 that has been run for a while, I'm going to let her be. Because everything is seasoned in. It's not like it's a brand new engine and you're starting it from nothing. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to throw some fuel down its throat and I'm going to show you how to set up for hopefully a start. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to my coil from positive over here on the battery, and I'm going to go down to the positive terminal on the coil. If you have an old school style coil, it will show you. Yep, see, we're hot. We're getting hot. Oh, that just burned the coil wire. All right, so we had the smoke get let out of it, which freaked me out a little bit because I've hot wired them like that before. I've never had it let the smoke out of the wire, and what that means is you've got an issue with a grounding problem on it. So I want to now go in and start doing some checks to make sure we have an operational electrical system to the distributor. With the 12 volts on there, it should have gone ahead and lit off because you're running straight 12 volts to the actual points like you would if you're running it in the start position. That's what the start position is for. It's a straight 12 volts to help the engine start up immediately, and then it drops back on the run position to run through the pink wire on a Ford to come out here to provide a lesser voltage, usually around 6 to 7 volts to the actual system under run conditions. But unfortunately, we're not getting any of that. So, gonna pop the cap. All right, now you're gonna see that I've put a different set of points in here. These are not new points. These are a set of points that we had in the other 6-cylinder that was running. So I know that this condenser is good. Rather than me going all the way down to the auto parts store, which you're probably going to have to do if you're doing this, and get another condenser, we went ahead and used the old one that was in the other 6. So we're going to try this one to see if we're going to get any better operation out of this engine. I'm going to put my rotor back in. And right there. I'm going to put the cap back on. Now, I've got this hooked up still, and I'm going to rehook it to positive on the battery. Woo-hoo. Still smoking it. So probably just smoked the other condenser. We got something going on here that I'm not liking the look of. It shouldn't be doing that unless the points are not in the right spot. And I can't really afford to smoke that wire any more than I already have. We got an issue here that I'm not understanding, because it shouldn't be doing that with a straight 12 volts to the positive side of the coil. This should induce a run condition. Doing the same thing. All right, so yesterday we had some colossal failures. We had some problems inside the distributor cap. The wires were grounding. That was what was causing it to bake the wires, or as my friend likes to say, let the smoke out of the wire running from the coil to the distributor. So this morning I just got mad. I came out here and I'm not mad, but I'm gonna fix this problem. One of the problems we had with this bundle of crap right here, this was all up and down through here. I think they were trying to wire up the neutral safety switch to make that work. It didn't work what they had done, because we already had a problem off camera when we did try to get the car to start, and it started with it backing up at one point. Like I've told you before, never stand in front of a car that you're starting for the first time, because it can knock your knees off. Because what I tend to want to do is I'll put my knees up against the car, and then bam, I am locked into it like that, and it'll just either knock me over or whatever, so be careful of that. So what I did was, to fix the problem, on a Ford, you have a red with blue wire that goes down to the neutral safety switch. If you put those two wires together like I've done here, you have a good start-run circuit. Now whenever he flips the key over, when we go to start working on that again, it will actually go to the start circuit and put 12 volts to the distributor, which you do that in the start portion of it. Normal run on a Ford is about 6 to 9 volts, somewhere in there. I'm not sure, I can't really remember what the numbering is, but it's like 6 volts. You want to reduce the voltage on a point system so that you don't burn the points out on the car. We have also had to go in, and I replaced this wire. I replaced it on the car because they had that just tied to, my meter's talking to me. They had it tied to the, do that. All right, so they had that wire tied to the red with green that goes out to the negative side of the coil. It just was looped together. Not a good circuit situation at all. So I went back in on that. I put a connector in and put a connector on the actual coil itself. So we should be good and tight now on the complete circuit going to the distributor. Now, one thing you can do whenever you're working on the wiring on these cars is you can actually use something like a product like Gojo to clean the wires up so you can see what you have. The previous owner of this car, or somebody in its past, has gone in and re-blacked the engine bay, but unfortunately when they did that, they blacked everything. All the wiring is black, all the firewall stuff is black. It's all black. You can't get that kind of paint, because I believe he probably used a Rust-Oleum paint on it. You can't get that paint off with the Gojo, but you can clean areas where the paint didn't get so that you can see what the wiring color is to make that determination so that you can put the system in play. It is not safe to have one of these cars set up without a neutral safety switch, and you'll want to go back at some point and get all of those wires reconnected in proper order so that the neutral safety switch works correctly on your car. If it's busted, you'll just have to replace it. Luckily, like for the Fairlane chassis, on this car it's a little different. Fairlane chassis, they have that available. We did a video on it a little while back. You can go check it out, showing the new neutral safety switch for the Fairlane chassis. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the condenser, because that's the last leg of what could potentially be a problem in a distributor cap. If your points are all set and ready to go, you're still not getting any electrical action out of your points. Your condenser is your next problem area. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my condenser to make sure that everything in the ignition circuit is okay. Now, the way you do that is you go to your ohms setting on here, and I'm going to put my ground on the case. And I'm going to put this lead on here, and you'll see it pulls numbers and they stay on there. It doesn't go away, and that's probably about okay for that. So we know that's right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go in the other direction. I'm going to put the negative ground, negative lead on the contact point, and we're good to go in that direction as well. So I think we're okay on this condenser. I just wanted to show you real quickly how to check a condenser for proper function. If you weren't getting any kind of readings out of the condenser, that would mean the condenser is bad. I have seen them to where they don't completely die. They kind of misfunction is the best way to put it. But I'm going to pull the other one out off camera because I don't want to go into all that. We're going to pull the other condenser out of the distributor and check it, and then probably put it back into play if it does work. So off camera I'm going to do that, and then we're probably going to get very close to actually showing you guys this thing starting and running. All right, after a series of misfortunate events, or whatever that thing is from Lemony Snicket's, what we came across was that I felt like we had a points problem. I'll show you what happened. Whenever the points started to fail because we kept shorting out, we didn't realize that we had a ground short to the base plate in the distributor. The points started shorting out, and what it did was it weakened that spring to where the spring's not returning the points all the way to closed. It looked like they were closed, but they weren't. And you can see that there's a problem because of how it has changed the color of the metal. I guess that's annealing. of the metal, so the spring no longer has its correct tension. The new points that we got from the auto parts store have correct tension, and now we're getting spark across the points, so we know we're good to go. So I'm going to put the rotor back in there, put the cap on. I'm going to see if we can get this thing to start after a couple of really fun days of having things happen to me that I have never had happen to me before when doing this sort of thing. So here we go. In just a minute, we'll have Jackson try to start it. All right, so here's our moment of truth. I'm standing back away from the car. We have it in neutral in theory, but we also have chocks in the wheels, and we have an extremely flat and busted out tire in the back. But I do know that it will roll because it happened when we did manage to get it to start off camera. I'm gonna put a little bit of gasoline down his choke throat. I'm gonna see if we can get it to light off. Try it. You don't have to hold the starter, just let it go. Again. All right, I think we have an engine that will run. We have no radiator cap, we have no hoses, but we now have proof of life on the engine. We can make it start and run off of what we got here. We got a voltage regulator that's exposed. Got a couple things that I want to work on to try to get it more further along in the run cycle, but that gives you an idea on what it took just to get this little 6-cylinder running. The missus heard it start. Yes, it started. We're filming. Come on up if you want to be on camera. All right, we're going to try this one more time. All right, hit it, Jackson. Not maintaining, but it is starting, and that's all I was looking for today. So I'm pretty happy about that. We were told the engine would start and run. It's not running, but it is starting, and that tells me that we've got a good beginning on what I want to do to get this thing where it's a running 6-cylinder. We know that the transmission will go in reverse because it did that when we thought we had it in park before. So other than that, that's all we got for this week, folks. Be sure to be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Down the Road. Whoo! That was a lot of work. 2 days worth. I would have never thought. I've never had an engine do me that way. Hopefully now it's all rectified.